Good evening. My feather again. You probably can't see that the right way around. There was a Native American called Fool's Crow, who, if I remember rightly, died at the age of 99. Okay. He died in 1989, and Fool's Crow was essentially probably one of the greatest Native American, what you might class as holy people, holy person, healer, wise elder, but also got involved in a lot of politics as well. So some might call him a shaman. Okay, so I've gone blurry again. Others might not call him a shaman, depending on the belief systems and the kind of the let's call it Puritan traditionals that sometimes kind of walk our paths, that don't like to use certain words for certain roles. Okay, and I was always taught when I started this path that you are not to call yourself a shaman. Okay, you're not to call yourself a shaman, and I agree with that, because it's presumptuous. Once you've worked a lifetime in the industry and you've got your wings, if you want to call it that, then maybe some people might choose to recognize you as a shaman. Okay. Apologies if the camera's gone blurry again. I'm trying to kind of keep it. It's probably because I'm sitting the other way around today and the light's coming through the window. Because my daughter Gabriella's hogging the sofa. Hiya! So, I like to think Fool's Crow, who I've only, to be honest with you, just really started to study in depth, because I'm all about trying to get as much knowledge, information, and extract as much juice from as many teachers as possible. And not all of them, unfortunately, are still on this earth plane, like Fool's Crow. But there are some great books about Fool's Crow. And there was a chap called Thomas E. Males who met Fool's Crow on a number of occasions and wrote a number of biographies of him. He interviewed him on many occasions, and this book is a book written by Thomas E. Males about Fool's Crow, and there's another one as well which I've got. I can't remember the title, but so you might be wondering, what am I on about, right? What am I talking about? Why am I talking about Fool's Crow tonight? What does it mean to want to tap into what I would class as ancient experience? Okay, I was going to do a video tonight about working with the shadow and whatnot, and I've felt a little bit funny today. I've not really kind of, whether I've not been in my body or not, but the events of the last few months have started to really create some revelations within me in my heart and my mind, and I truly believe now that we are at a very critical juncture in this thing that we call humanity, playing this thing that we call life on planet Earth, organized in these things that we call nations and civilizations and societies. Fool's Crow, a Native American elder, lived in tribal societies, okay? And a lot of his wisdom comes from actually being a part of, a synchronistic thread within the whole of nature, within the whole of the cosmos, really, within the whole of everything that's been created. The Native Americans never regarded themselves as above nature, as above the earth, as above the animals and the plants and the rocks. They always saw themselves as part of this giant network of life, and they honoured it daily. They trod very lightly. They expressed gratitude and love towards everything. I'm not saying, that all Native Americans were these perfected beings, because they weren't. They had egos too, right? They had scraps and fights and disagreements, but like a lot of the more original indigenous traditions on this planet, they never had a story like we do, or some of us do, or did, that told us that we had fallen from paradise. The Aborigines were never told that they'd been ejected from paradise. The Native Americans were never told that they'd been ejected from paradise. And many other traditions of old were never told that they had been ejected from paradise, ejected from the Garden of Eden. And I've always kind of wondered why. And over the course of even just the last few months, if not the last 5 to maybe 10 years, the pieces of the jigsaw have been kind of coming together for me a lot more. And it's very apparent that Western mindset, the way we set our mind, the way we essentially, not necessarily the way we think, but our attitude, from a traditional Christian perspective, our idolatry, has created this presumption that we have power over everything else. And you only need to look at history to really prove that. When I say the word idolatry, a lot of people might think that idolatry means, you're carving idols out of bits of wood and rock and stone and whatnot, and you're worshipping these things. No, idolatry means that you are essentially worshipping or honouring your egos. These false senses of I that you're placing before everything else. You're placing your sense of little self before God, before spirit, before your true nature. And by feeding that, it grows, right? It grows to the point where it thinks it is a God itself. And it's not. It is far from it. And we're at a critical juncture on this planet, because when you truly choose to commune with nature, with all of the different forces and powers that exist simultaneously, not only on this planet, but within this solar system, within this cosmos, when you truly journey, when you truly connect to this vast web of multiplicitous vibrations of energy that manifest in all sorts of different ways, you come to a realization that not only in the last 100 years, but a lot longer than that, our mindset has become so disconnected that we have created a horrific imbalance in this web. If you've ever watched Star Wars, you've probably heard of the term the Force. May the Force be with you, yeah? And there's the dark side and the light side of the Force, yeah? That wasn't meant to be Darth Vader, by the way. But this Force encompasses everything, right? It encompasses the dark and the light. It encompasses the ignorance and the intelligence. It encompasses the opposites. So it is all of it. And the problem we have is when we create an imbalance, because we will create an imbalance in an area, right? So the Western mindset, I you know, some people might disagree with me, but I actually call it an illness, yeah, a sickness. This sickness creates huge imbalances of energy, of polarity. And the reason I'm speaking on this video tonight is because today I really thought that what's going to happen to us as a collective humanity? Forget what's going on at the moment. If what we do at the end of this recent event, we just carry on doing what we were doing before. And this isn't about a lot of the stuff that's out there that people are very concerned about at the moment. You know, the vaccines, the 5G, all this kind of stuff, okay? This is more about our mindset. What are we looking to be when we emerge from this recent crisis, okay? Because it is a crisis, or this recent catalyst for potential transformation. The choice is yours and mine and ours, okay? And no one can choose for you, right? But what I've been doing over the last few days as I've been tending my garden and contemplating the life that this vehicle is living at the moment, going forward, is what have I done, not just in this life potentially, but many other lives, but in specific time and space reality right now, this life, that has created large and sometimes not necessarily irreparable, because everything gets balanced in the end, but where have I abused my power? Okay, where have I taken more than I've needed? Where have I essentially manipulated? Where have I worshipped my little self to the extent that has caused ripples going outwardly, which eventually need to be balanced? Yeah? The rune nowadays, okay, is all about sorting your shit out. Okay? The rune of restriction, resources. We have entered a time of restriction, okay? We have entered a time where resources might become slim. Food, anything that you might be taking for granted right now, and I continue, I apologize for the blurring of the video, okay? But I'm not going to move seats now. We might get to a position where, like they did in the Second World War, you know, they had to have rations and all sorts of stuff because of what was going on at the time. And those individuals that lived through those periods of time. My father and my mother lived through those periods of time. My grandparents in particular were adults during that period of time. They had a completely different mindset, okay, to those of us probably born from about 1960 onwards. And that mindset at the time was more geared towards sustainability. It was more geared towards respect for each other. It was more geared towards community. It was geared towards support. It was geared towards altruism. And it was geared, I guess, or it was geared towards less need to feed the ego. Okay. Now I'm just speaking from my own experience. I'm not saying that this is something that's across the board. You know, we all have different parents and ancestors and whatnot. But my parents and my ancestors in particular, and I always used to take the mickey out of my dad sometimes because he used to fix everything. You know, there used to be a point where literally the cutlery and the plates had been araldited so much that you were eating off araldite rather than china. But I never got that really. I can never really understand it. And you know, if you're in the new age circles now, you talk about abundance mentalities and manifestation, all this kind of stuff, and you know, I kind of buy into that, but to an extent. But you also need to realize that you are living on a finite planet. You're living on a fixed resource. Okay, it's a rock. Okay, it's a rock that's spinning around the sun. This rock has got a certain amount of stuff in it that we can survive off. It has a certain amount of ability to regenerate itself, to be able to feed us, to be able to create an environment for us where we can exist in harmony with it. The mother, great mother, okay, is struggling right now, has been struggling for a really long time, and it's because every single one of us on this planet has taken too much. Every single one of us has at some point either unconsciously been swept along by the current tide of consumerism, of egotistical narcissism, of idolatry, worshipping the little self, to the extent that we have put ourselves above the needs of the planet, above the needs of community, above the needs of everybody. Okay? And I know I'm probably talking about stuff you might have heard already, but there's no point just talking about it. You know, we've really got to get to a point now where, however large or small, we are doing something about it. And the only way you're going to do something about it is if you actually make a commitment. Okay? Make a commitment to a change. Make a commitment, firstly, to do a recapitulation exercise of your life up to this point. And do it with love. It's not a judgmental process. This is a perfectly objective process where you can look back on your life from the very first memory you can kind of come back to and try to understand where you may have abused your power, where you may have lived unsynchronistically with the planet, where you may have taken too much, abused other people, taken power over from other people, even been too submissive at times where, you know, so you've gone the other way, right? And then allowed others to take from you. And with these recapitulation exercises, what you're starting to see is certain patterns. So you've got to start to get honest with yourself about what potentially caused some of these patterns, all right? So, for example, if you were bullied at school, so if you were the one that had to submit and you were bullied, right, then you might end up becoming the bully then. Because your way of asserting yourself is to become maybe over aggressive and over physical and verbal with individuals in order to feel validated and heard. And so it's almost like, we swing from extremes of the pendulum all the time, and then we don't find that middle point, or we don't find a point of comfortable balance where it's kind of doing this rather than this all the time. And Western mindset has essentially worshipped the idol of greed, pride, greed, anger, lust. And by the way, I'm not preaching here. These terminologies I'm using: greed, pride, anger, lust, apathy, guilt, shame. They're just words that depict certain states of consciousness that separate us from spirit, separate us from God, separate us from ourselves, separate us from each other. You've only got to look out that window, and down the street to see how fearful people are now of walking past each other. People can't look each other in the eye anymore. Yeah? And this separation is perfect karma, a perfect consequence of the choices that we've made up to this point. So we have to get honest with ourselves. We have to get to a point where if we can look back with love at what's happened up to this point and genuinely take into account the actions and the consequences of those actions that we've taken as a collective and as an individual, we can then change, And it's not about changing anything out there. It's not about changing other people. It's about getting honest with your own inner world and beginning to unpick that if you want to, If you pledge to make changes within yourself, then it's likely that you'll be initiated, The term initiation carries many connotations, but initiation is really a test, It just tests if you're being a hypocrite. And hands up, who hasn't, Who hasn't been a hypocrite? Who doesn't continue to be an unconscious hypocrite at times and then accuse others of being hypocrites? Yeah? Demons calling other people demons. It's what we are at the moment. We're just pointing fingers at everyone else, right? And not able to really look at where we're at, And part of getting into your power is to really be honest about where you're at, and where you're at now, And there's again, without judgment, There's that prayer that that Christian prayer, Lord have mercy, Lord Jesus Christ have mercy upon me a sinner. Lord Jesus Christ have mercy upon me a sinner. I am a miserable sinner. We're all miserable sinners. But sin, in the way it's been portrayed over the last couple of thousand years by the Roman Catholic Church, isn't really what it means. Sin is ultimately a function of unconsciousness. It's a function of ignorance, and it's actually a function of an overemphasis on idolatry, an overemphasis on worshipping the false self, worshipping the ego, the egoic construct that, if it's given too much power, governs the life, governs the physical human life. And too much imbalance there creates all sorts of chaos out there. All right. Hello. There we are, back again. As you can see around you. So, the point of this video, really, if you're waiting for it, banging on again, is to encourage you, each and every one of you who's watched this video, and if I get one view, brilliant, hopefully, whoever's viewing this will do the exercise, is go meditate on your life, all right, up to this point, and get honest about where you've taken too much, where you've been swept along with that tide of consumerism, where your sense of happiness and fulfillment has been based on things, yeah, rather than inner connection, where you haven't honored nature. And that could be through your diet, that could be through the way you think about nature, that could be through leaving litter on a beach, or you know, not cleaning up after yourself if you go to the park for a picnic, or simple things, yeah, simple things that we can do on a daily basis to show that we actually care a little bit. You know, the Buddhists always talk about detachment, right? Detachment doesn't mean you don't care, okay? Detachment means that you see things more clearly as they are, but then you do the right thing, okay? And doing the right thing means because you can see things clearly as they are, because you can see the web, you can see the interconnectedness of everything, you will do the right thing, because you know otherwise you're going to get a kick in the butt from karma. And if we don't initiate ourselves, if we don't do this work consciously, nature's going to do it for us. That's law, okay? And nature is impersonal, which means what has to happen generally is quite painful, right? You either learn the hard way or not. So when I started this exercise a few months ago, when this thing was coming at us, I had this kind of, I had this real urge to make a garden, you know, a small garden. I just had this urge to give something back, yeah? And already it's amazing how much nature is responding to that, how many birds I'm seeing in the area now that I wasn't seeing before, how little larvae are growing in my pond, how the whole atmosphere of my house has changed because I've literally created a little Eden for myself and for the creepy crawlies and the winged ones, yeah, and the rooted ones and the rocks and the water and the elementals and whatever you want to call them, okay? They're all invited to the party. As long as you treat them with respect and as long as you treat them with honour. So, if you can, build a garden. If you can't, plant a window box. Do something to remember your mother. Remember your earth as your mother. And it doesn't have to be a big bloody ritual where you're singing all sorts of crazy mantras and chants and songs. It could just be a quiet contemplation that you're doing whilst you're planting something, or it could be a thanksgiving exercise to say, do you know what? I'm really sorry for the abuse of the past, and I am genuinely in my heart recompensing for that and will continue to recompense for that and to give back. It's about giving back. Now is the time to give back. Now is the time to be humble. Now is the time to really look at ourselves from deep within and say, yes, we've been little shits for quite a long time. And there are people who are going to continue to be shits for quite a long time. But it needs the kind of people who are probably watching this video to step up and do the work. and do the change. It ain't going to happen overnight, and it's hard work, and you're going to hit roadblocks, and you're going to see parts of yourself which you're not going to like. You're not going to like, which is why eventually I will start talking about how to work with your shadow and various other aspects of evil, ignorance within you, which you may or may not be aware of. But for now, start with a recapitulation exercise. Start with something that recognizes an element of the past within you that has damaged, okay, and do something to try and balance that in some small way. Whatever you can do. It could mean changing your diet. It could be saying, well, do you know what, I'm going to eat less meat or less processed meat or any meat, right? Not because you've got to be a vegan or a vegetarian, but to actually understand the abuse that we have perpetrated on innocent animal souls to feed our greed has been immense. And there's a massive karmic impact on that for that. Huge. Well, people don't really understand. That's just another example, okay? Look within, look outside as a reflection of inside, and do your bit as we emerge from this virus. It ain't over yet. I don't feel things are going to continue for a good few years yet, as karma starts to come to fruition, as restrictions start to cause other problems, okay, as the shadow starts to manifest even further, okay, because as our little toys get taken away, let's see who can live without them. Let's see who can walk their talk. I'm not trying to be morbid or cynical, but it really is time to start to clean up our act. Anyway, I shall smudge all that negativity away. Oof. See you next time.